Okay, welcome. Day 9 up to 99 days. Feels like I'm going to dive in straight away. Perhaps some people are joining me in a few moments. My apologies for postponing the session to 1 o'clock or confusing you perhaps with the timings. I had a restless night due to my eldest who had an ear infection, and so I was hoping to sleep a little bit longer, but that didn't happen. So I decided to go for a run and see if that gave back some energy. And actually, there's quite something I became aware of, that especially when you are feeling in a low frequency, like you're feeling like nothing is working, I feel a little bit down, or I'm not so excited today, or something intense is really coming up, like, oh, this is kind of a trigger and gives a lot of emotion, and you feel like you're being pulled down. It really, really helps to do physical exercise at that moment, to really move the energy in your body and especially increase the heart rate of your body. And as we know now, the heart is quite an important organ for us all. It really helps to just literally pump it up again and create some endorphin in our system, which is a result of exercise, to literally lift your frequency. So this, just as a side note, that exercise does help. And although I'm a huge fan of yoga, especially Bikram yoga, I'm doing for many years, 6 or 7, it doesn't really give the same effect as doing a physical exercise like a run. Because there's a difference, I think, to what's done with the heart. And sometimes the yoga can bring me more down or give me the same, keeps kind of the low frequency in place, whilst running or even fast walking or any other exercise you would like to do really helps to get out of this sense of feeling low. So try it out, play with it, what helps for you, what works for you. And at least almost all exercises take us out of the mind, the monkey mind, the chatter mind, the person mind. So it also relaxes you within. Today I want to share with you about being or feeling or becoming indifferent. Because I noticed when I started this so-called journey, and technically it's not a journey, but anyway, started these 7 years, my first teacher was very clear and direct and said everything is just a story. And just don't believe the stories. And we talked about our mind and the thoughts in our mind, and these are all just little stories, which is true. But I was always fighting with the fact that, well, if you don't open up to people's stories, don't you become indifferent then? Do you really care for people? And luckily enough, or whatever the reason was, either I didn't hear his answer or I couldn't receive his answer, or he didn't give me an answer. I found out, because he actually didn't reply to that in my experience or in my belief at that moment. But I found out for myself that it's absolutely the opposite of being indifferent. You're completely opening up to life itself. You're completely embracing life from living from the heart and being aware of what's happening and being less identified or less attached to the identification of your person. Because being less identified with that, or no, it's not identified, but less attached to that, gives you the opportunity to be more present and be really there, be really one with life, to anything that happens. The good things, the bad things, the ugly things, anything. And once I noticed that, it was quite overwhelming as well, because there was so much information coming in that made me confused. And I didn't know how to process it all, or how to react, or how to be compassionate. And there was a lot of things going inside, and there were a lot of reactions from my environment who didn't really understand what I was doing and what I was dealing with. And they asked me questions. What are your experiences, and what is it actually, this spiritual path you're following? Or is it a spiritual path, or you're reading so much? And I just couldn't share at first. So I went into my old habit of just being more silent and just not share so much about it. I thought, like, well, I just do the work first until I know the perfect story, and then I'll start sharing. And obviously that doesn't work either, because I kind of exploded after many years. Like, I have to share because it's so beautiful. But all these phases are allowed. It's all good. It's just part of the process. And for every one of you and anyone in this world, it's different. It depends on how you've wired in the first place. So for some of you, it might be a process of being extremely outgoing and expressing yourself unconsciously in many different ways, and being always very loud and present, in the sense that you've always shared your opinions with people. And it might be then now the phase that you just go more inwardly and first become aware of the different processes and contemplate about it and reflect within. So you might become more silent at first. And that might eventually be more natural to you as well. Because you might notice that being so outgoing was more a defense mechanism than it was a natural you. And for me, being more silent was also a defense mechanism. I didn't dare to show up, because I was afraid that I got some feedback that I couldn't handle. I wouldn't have the right answer, or I would feel uncomfortable with not knowing something. But that was not natural to me either. So it's finding new balances while you go through these phases. And it might also be that you feel for a while, you will feel very comfortable with just being with yourself. Because opening up to the world, opening up to your life, opening up to different levels of consciousness can be quite intense. And then it's too intense to receive other opinions, other energies, people around you who influence you too much. So you withdraw a little, and that's fine. That would make sense. You can't do it all at once. Well, you can, but unfortunately, for many, it doesn't happen all at once. We don't make the shift at once. So although people might perceive you as being more indifferent because you're not the one that is actively joining the conversation and gossiping with others about others, because you suddenly become aware that this whole gossiping is actually quite an interesting phenomena. Why do we gossip? Why does it feel good to gossip? It's really interesting to explore that for yourself. What is it that you get out of it that makes gossiping nice? Go during lunch hour to restaurants where lots of business people meet each other, especially colleagues who go out for a lunch break. And if you just listen to the conversation, they're all gossiping about, talking about others. Not always negative, but it's always about others. Why do we do that? Why it's so more easy to talk about others than to talk about ourselves and what we feel and what we experience. So withdrawing from that, well, showing up differently than you might have done before, people might say to you, what happened to you? You become so indifferent or more silent or less involved, or you don't really have to answer that question, and whatever answer is okay, what feels good to you at that moment. But that's a nice comment. Yes, gossiping helps to cover their faults, which is true. We hide ourselves behind gossiping. We hide our own faults behind gossiping. That's certainly one aspect of it. But there's more to it. There's definitely more to it. It makes you feel better than the other person. Because when I talk the other person down, I'll kind of raise myself up in comparison to the other person or persons. Because I know it's so much better than they do. I can see through what they're doing. But becoming indifferent or showing up differently is just something to be okay with. And I could not be doing it the other way around from the start, like being a very outgoing, spontaneous, loud person. And I'm still not. And perhaps I will, or perhaps I won't. I don't know. I'm just following my natural flow, and I can still see myself holding back at moments. Not showing up, or like this huge challenge now to learn a new language, Spanish. It's so interesting what happens within me. All these old patterns come back up of fear, and fear of making mistakes, of fear of not being able to learn that. Just an old pattern, just an old limiting belief system within me. But so far, it's holding me back on that specific thing of learning this new language. And just allow yourself some space in exploring yourself, exploring new ways, getting comfortable with the comfortability of certain situations. getting comfortable with awkwardness in certain situations. And when you can be fully present with others, and even though what they are sharing is not so much of your interest anymore, you can still be open to their sharing and just try to active listen what's actually underneath what they're sharing. Why is it that they are so loud about something? And perhaps you can ask a different question to open that up. Just an open question, not like I'm going to tell you how it is, because now I have a new insight, so I'm going to show you how it actually is. Most of the time it doesn't work. I experience that people cannot hear these messages about new perspectives on life if they're not open to it, if they don't ask the question themselves. But you can gently help them to open up as well. And when you're really present at that moment, when you manage to be present, you can sense that you are present there with so much more compassion about the situation, about the other person. There's no you in that moment that needs something of that group or of that conversation or of that friendship. It's just you. And all is good. And the other thing that will happen is that you will experience changes in your friendships. I know it happened for many, and it definitely happened for me. And people resonated less with me or for me. And I probably resonated less with them. And it was really interesting what kind of changes in friendship that turn out to be like really abrupt. Is that in English? Really unexpected changes, like long friendships that suddenly ended to me, it came out of nowhere. And that can be hurtful because you're thinking you're doing the right thing by exploring yourself, waking up, being more conscious, and then people turn you down. And it was hurtful. But at the same time, I could also see like, well, this is apparently at this phase in our lives, we're not meant to be together. And I could soften into that so much that I can still be very grateful for what we had and okay that it's over now. It's sad from people from spiritual communities that you're simply becoming a light that shines too bright. And people cannot always handle a bright light. Feel some truth in that. But I can only be a light if I don't judge. Otherwise, I'm not a light anymore. I tumble down in all the frequencies, and I'm definitely not a high frequency of light anymore. So this frequency of light, this frequency of love, this higher frequency that feels good and peaceful and happy and is flowing and is energizing. That's a frequency also of compassion. And I will share another day how this compassion how you can use this compassion and this frequency to be of service to others, and how you can explore that, or to the world, be of service to the world, or be of service to your small community or your family or whatever. Because our goal, if we can, or our intention here, is to release things that hold us back. So life does become more flowing. And flowing, when life is in flow, it does feel lighter. And it feels more liberated. It feels more liberated. Liberated in the sense that you can choose. Every single moment in your life you can choose. And going through these phases of experiencing with your emotions and becoming aware of them, and what some of you also shared in the group, a lot of emotions can become stronger, like frustration and anger and grief or sadness. And although we are trying to get more disattached from the identity, doesn't mean that we don't have emotions anymore. On the contrary, the emotions become more vivid and alive and more explosive, I would almost say, than it was before, because you don't filter them anymore. It gets more pure. Your challenge only in that is, when it gets so pure, that your environment, the people around you, you might scare them off. Like, what the hell is happening there? Why is she so intense, or he is so intense? So then the communication skills come in. And I strongly believe in developing communication skills from the state of a higher awareness, from the state of being aware of what's happening within you. I don't believe in developing communication skills when you're completely unaware. Then it's just a trick. And I'm extremely sensitive to it, but I can feel when someone uses excellent communication skills, but it doesn't feel authentic at all. Then I can still be impressed by the skills. Like, wow, you did that, very clever. But I don't believe it, that you really feel like that. Or I don't believe that you're really listening to me. Or I don't believe that you really are there for me in that moment and compassionate with me for my story. And when you get into an angry phase, like a frustration, and you are challenged now with how to show up differently because you become aware that you're projecting, or you become aware that you're triggered, then it's useful to look at your communication skills at that moment. Can you just share, like, I'm sorry I'm triggered. Give me a moment. So you can at least get a little bit attention of that trigger before you unconsciously react. Or when you see the other person's perspective, but you simply don't agree from the state that you're in or the position you're in. We don't have to agree with each other. That's not the idea of seeing multiple perspectives. But sometimes it helps to acknowledge the other person in his perspective. So that person feels seen And you can lift the conversation or the argument or the conflict to another level, where there is space for both of you to explore this dialogue, this conflict. And actually then the conflict turns into a dialogue. And then you can still hold on to your perspective, but you can use phrases like, I understand where you're coming from, but from my point of view, this is what feels okay, or to me now, or this is what resonates for me, or this is what I need to do now, or what I need to choose now. Or you can say, I hear your perspective, but can you help me to phrase it in a different way so I understand it? Or I can sense into it. Or when you're angry and you want to express your frustration towards the others because you just simply, it happened for the, I don't know, how many times he or she did the same thing and it happens again and you're really fed up with it. Like I've told you so many times, you're still doing it, that kind of frustration. Then change that way of communicating your frustration in a sentence like, I really need this now. I need this from you. Are you okay to give that? Or for me now, it's important to receive this. Or for me now, it's important to express myself like this. So it's required to become an active listener as well as a person who can honestly share the needs, the desires, or even the discomfort or the frustration or whatever emotion came up. And sometimes it can be very, very functional to get angry. But don't get mean while you're angry. We're all probably familiar with the fact that you should never use never, nice sentence, or always when you are in an argument, especially not with your partner. You never do things like that. You always do this, and etc., etc. And that immediately put the other person's in his defense or in his attack mode. But instead you could say like, well, I'm really frustrated because to me it feels like we've had this conversation so many times and I don't really know how to reach you. And then you activate the other person to get into his adult role and take a shared responsibility of the issue you have together. Especially the repetitive ones I'm talking about. What comes up now for me, if it might be interesting for you all to invite a friend to co-host one of the sessions, as she's an expert on this relational communication from awareness. She doesn't work with people who are not aware. There must be an awareness of self, at least. There must be a level of self-reflection to be able to join her in her trainings. And they're really amazing. It's such an excellent trainer to develop these skills. And actually, if you're interested, I think she's having another training in August this year, in the summer. She lives in Belgium, though, in Leuven, but it's not so far. Well, at least not for the Dutch one, sorry. Just realized there are people living all over the world joining us now, so. I just leave this idea for now and just see either what comes up in the group or whether it comes up again as a valuable addition to these 99 days. And there are actually more people that came up for me who I love to listen to because they're so specialized in certain topic, to ask them to co-host some sessions with me. Like someone who's completely embodying empowerment. So amazing to listen to and to really tap into her frequency and how she can make it so crystal clear what true empowerment is. And later this week I will get back to empowerment, because I don't want this 99 days to become very heavy and intense. And at the same time, we have to go through the phases. But I want to, it's constant balance of shutting the thought patterns down or the mind down, opening up the heart, sensing, become aware of what's happening inside in your body, learn to listen, become aware and aware and aware in every second of the day. And at the same time also there are lots of patterns are changing or are reprogrammed, and that feels sometimes very heavy. But it requires practice. So how are you all with the practices? We're still trying to sense within those 12 times a day. I think I mentioned on day 2 or day 3. Have you already connected to your heart or made friendship with your heart? Or are you still struggling there? And then please ask. Anything that in these first 8 days is still like coming up as a constant resistance, or like, I don't believe this, or I don't think it's true, I don't want to get into that direction, or it keeps coming up like, really? Like, is this true? I don't believe it. Or when I think about it, I feel so much contraction, I cannot even listen to that topic. Just share it if you want to explore more about a certain topic I already touched upon. And they will come back. I mean, I'm sure there will be. All the topics we've touched upon so far will come back and come back and come back. But if it's helpful for you now, because it's really blocking you and holding you back, let the group know. And perhaps that day I will use different wordings or explain it in a different way, that you might hear the message, or you receive it differently, or you choose just not to believe it. That's okay too. Please don't believe everything I say. Explore it. There's only one truth. That's the truth for yourself. But from a pure resonance, from an inner knowing, that's when you know it's a truth for you. That is what's resonating for you at that moment, or that's what is in alignment with you. And that requires honesty, radical honesty. Okay. I think that's it for today. I'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Bye.